Welcome to Trigger Warning with your host, Chris Brumbles. Are you tired of the professional liars of fake news and far-left radicals? Are you ready for truth and common sense? The insanity and divisiveness of political correctness and identity politics have no place here. So welcome to Trigger Warning, where free speech is free speech, not racism. There are no participation trophies, so if your mind is weak, grab your binky, head to your safe space. Consider this your trigger warning.
Good afternoon, Columbia County, and welcome to another edition of Trigger Warning, where we reject political correctness and left-wing nutjob, middle-class killing policies, and we embrace truth and common sense. Just when you thought that 2020 had gotten as nutty as it could get, we get an election day that has turned into, guess what, election month. That's right, we probably won't know who our president is until mid-December. And even though the lamestream media and left-wing dingbats are trying to convince you that Slow Joe won the election, it just ain't so. There's a ton of fraud out there, and the funny thing is, it all seems to help Joe Biden. When you went to sleep on election night, it was pretty clear to many of us that President Trump would win another term. But oh, what a difference a night makes. Hundreds of thousands of ballots appeared magically after the election was over, and a miracle that defies common sense, logic, and mathematical probability occurred. They were all for Sleepy Joe. The president called this a month ago when he warned about the voter fraud that might happen from the mail-in ballots. Over-balloting, computer glitches, errors, phantom votes, Republicans not allowed to poll watch, even here in Oregon, by the way. Blatant, in-your-face voter fraud. Right now, there are 80 electoral votes that are in dispute from 7 states. 6 of them have GOP leadership. And the media calls the election. Let me let you in on a secret. The media does not decide elections, and neither does governors, or even if they go to the Supreme Court of their state and have the election laws changed. You see, only the state legislature can decide how elections can take place. And no, you can't change the rules in the middle of election, even if you get approval from your state Supreme Court. I believe that the U.S. Supreme Court will step in and overrule this serious violation of the U.S. Constitution. The Constitution is clear. The Electoral College takes place on December 14th, at which time we will know who the president will be in the coming years. And I am confident that it will be Donald Trump's second term. Let's just wait and see. What do you think? Meanwhile, here in Columbia County, not only did we continue being a red county, but we voted red on everything. It seems that liberty is still way more popular than chains. The Second Amendment sanctuary ordinance passed, so since we passed the SAPO some time back, we will now have our natural-born right to self-defense doubly protected, triply if you count the Second Amendment. We are now a sanctuary county for the right to keep and bear arms. Our undocumented firearms are protected, and criminals won't be the only ones who have guns. We got rid of Kate Brown's judge appointment and replaced her with Judge Clark. Congratulations, sir. We decided to get rid of some of the Marxists in our county, so we fired the wolves in sheep clothing, Alex Tardif, and replaced him with Casey Garrett on the commissioner's board. And he will do a great job. He's a good man. At the same time, you did not elect the nutjob Marxist Brandy the Dud Dudzik. But stay tuned, she is not going away and will attempt to steal an election in the future, so we have to remain vigilant. She ran as a veteran, but let me tell you, she is a veteran in name only that never took her oath of office seriously. She is an Ameriphobe that hates everything this country stands for. Just follow her Facebook page. Last but not least, the race for state rep. 2 years ago, Brian Stout ran against Brad Whitlis and only had about 3 months to get his name out. With the help of some of us in the county, he made a great showing, only losing to Sad Brad by 400 votes in this county. I believe that Portland pushed his loss up to over 4,000 votes, or so I've been told. Jump ahead 2 years, and the whole county pitched in to get rid of Nitwit, and this election day, Brian beat Brad by almost 3,000 votes in this county, and is behind right now at the time of me writing this, by 461 votes, because Portland is gerrymandered into our district. That's quite a showing, and word is Witt is losing his mind over how close it was. Stay tuned, though. There may be a surprise coming up. even make everyone in this county very happy. We'll see how things turn out, but this may not be over yet. Moving forward, Columbia County cannot figure out how the county stayed red. But the truth is that they are out of touch with everything but their insanity, and because they are so venomous and divisive, they will never understand that real Americans embrace liberty, not left-wing ideology. Well, folks, today we have a special guest on our show. I am honored that John Guandolo agreed to come on and educate us on some of the threats that have been facing America today. John is the president and founder of Understanding the Threat, the only organization in America providing tools to leaders, police, and citizens to identify and dismantle jihadi terrorist networks in their local communities. Currently, Mr. Guandolo advises governments, U.S. and others on matters related to national security, specifically the threat from the global Islamic movement. He actively briefs and teaches members of Congress, senior military officials, police, the intelligence community, key community leaders, and others. Mr. Guandolo served as a guest lecturer at the Joint Chief of Staff College and at the U.S. Army War College. He is the co-author of the book Sharia, The Threat to America. It was written in 2010. And author of the books Raising a Jihadi Generation and Islam's Deception, The Truth About Sharia. His books may be purchased at his website, www.understandingthethreat.com, or at Amazon. John is a 1989 graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy who took a commission as an officer in the U.S. Marine Corps. He served with the 2nd Battalion, 2nd Marines as an infantry platoon commander in Desert Storm. He has served in the 2nd Force Reconnaissance Company as a platoon commander, assistant operations officer, and the unit's airborne and diving officer. He was also deployed to Bosnia. He served for 1 year as the unit leader for the CINC's In Extremis Force, directly reporting to a combatant commander in a classified mission profile. Mr. Guandolo was a combat diver, military freefall parachutist, and a graduate of the U.S. Army Ranger School. In 1996, John resigned his commission in the Marines and joined the Federal Bureau of Investigations, where he had too many accolades to go into right now. But in 2006, he was designated a subject matter expert, an expert, folks, by FBI headquarters, and created and implemented the FBI's first counterterrorism training program focused on the Muslim Brotherhood, Islamic doctrine, and the global Islamic movement and terrorist organizations, including Hamas and others. John was presented the Defender of the Homeland Award in 2007 by Senators John Kyle and Joseph Lieberman. To tell you the truth, I could talk about his accomplishments all day, but you would just have to take my word for it when I tell you that this guy knows what he is talking about. So make sure to come back after the break and listen to what he has to say. We'll be right back with my honored guest, John Guandolo, here on Trigger Warning.
Hello, all you triglets out there listening to Trigger Warning. This is where we reject political correctness and left-wing insanity, but instead, we embrace truth and common sense. You know, there is only one gun group in Oregon that will not compromise on your rights, and that is Oregon Firearms Federation. With all the trickery and evil bills that come from the supermajority in Salem, you need a friend who will keep you informed of these nefarious plans to plunder your rights. If you have not done so, don't delay. Go to OregonFirearms.org and sign up for the free alerts. It will cost you nothing, and you will get the truth on what's going on in Salem. There is absolutely no common sense in giving up your rights, so sign up for our email alerts, and if you want to donate, we won't complain, and it will be put to good use. Oregon Firearms Federation, the only no-compromise gun group in the state of Oregon, at OregonFirearms.org. Sign up today. Northwest Observer, another great news source that tells it like it is. Give it a try. I'm sure you will be impressed. It's time that we have truth in the news. So go to Northwest Observer and give Redoubt News a shot, and you have nothing to lose and only facts to gain. Now, back to Trigger Warning, where we reject political correctness and left-wing nut job policies, and we embrace truth and common sense. With your host, Chris Brumbles.
Welcome back, Columbia County. We have a great guest on today, John Guandolo. Guandolo, am I saying that right?
Yes.
From Understanding the Threat. How you doing, John?
I am doing great. Great to be on with you, Chris.
Well, sir, I just got done reading part of your resume, and I got to tell you, I'm very impressed, and I want to thank you for all your service to this country.
Well, thank you for saying that. I've been blessed in my life to be able to do some really interesting things and interesting work. So I consider it a blessing.
Well, I tell you what, I don't know what we'd do without people like you. Can you tell the audience a little bit about Understanding the Threat and what they do?
I sure can. Our organization, Understanding the Threat, is the only organization in America which trains and teaches citizens to understand the doctrine, the networks, and the modus operandi of the communist and the Islamic movements in the United States, and how to operate against them at the local level. So teaching them not only the threats, but how to share with others about the threat and how to actually build a team of citizens at the local level to map out those networks and actually operate very aggressively, lawfully, but very aggressively against them. We also obviously consult with state and local leaders, law enforcement, military, intelligence professionals, elected officials at the national and state level, but we have found our greatest momentum has come from working with patriots on the ground who want to get involved to defend their communities and their states.
Uh-huh. Well, so what made you first start wanting to do this? This is quite a commitment for you.
Yes, I'll tell you, everybody on my team, there's a price to be paid to do this kind of work for sure. You know, my background is I'm a Naval Academy graduate. Was commissioned in the Marine Corps and served in infantry and reconnaissance units in the Marine Corps, served in combat, and got out of the Marine Corps in 1996 and joined the FBI as a special agent. And after about 5 years of criminal work after 9/11, was moved over into the counterterrorism division, and pretty quickly began working on cases both of international impact and directly domestic impact in the United States. And what I discovered through working these investigations that there is a significant Islamic movement, and that's what they call themselves, capital I, capital M, Islamic movement in the United States, whose sole goal is to overthrow the U.S. government and impose an Islamic state under Islamic law, Sharia. And it's primarily led by, though not exclusively, but primarily led by the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States. And through the investigations I was working, I came to discover that all of the prominent Islamic organizations in the United States are a part of this movement. Most are part of the Muslim Brotherhood's movement, but some are, Iranian, Hezbollah, some are Tablighi Jamaat, Jamaati Islami, but they are all working together for the same cause, which is against us. The other thing I found that was disturbing, and this was back in, between 2003 and late 2002 and early 2004, was that the leaders of a number of these organizations, these hostile jihadi organizations, were meeting with our leaders, both in the White House and the national security staffs, meeting with members of Congress who are on Intel, Homeland Security Committee, working with State Department, Department of Defense, CIA, FBI, and they were the ones our leaders were leaning on to give them answers about Islam.
Wow.
And I'll just kind of conclude this thought with this. That's why today the leaders in our government in the national security realm have an understanding of Islam, for instance, that is exactly opposite of what 10-year-old Muslims learn about Islam in U.S. Islamic schools, and that's why our leaders don't understand the really significant coordinated efforts between the communist movement in the United States and the Islamic movement, because these two movements are working very closely at the local, state, national, and international level.
Yeah, it's kind of like an enemy of my enemy is my friend. And what happens if they ever do get their way? They're gonna.
Well, I would argue they are getting their way right now.
Right.
They have made great progress, and so if they get their way, they're going to overthrow our government.
Right.
They don't intend to primarily do that through violence. They've done most of their work in the nonviolent realm. The influence they have in Congress, for instance, in the national security realm, in the Department of Defense, at the state and local level, in school boards, in chambers of commerce, in state legislatures. The media goes without saying. I mean, I think if the last week hasn't demonstrated to people that the traditional media is batting for the enemies of liberty, I don't think you're going to be capable to receive any other information that's going to help move the needle in your life. But that's what both the communist movement and the Islamic movement, they seek to overthrow our system of government. I mean, and they're openly saying it. In the communist movement and the jihadi movement, what they are about. The communists are talking about, we're going to do away with the electoral process. We're going to do the kinds of things that are core communist platforms and communist policies, if you will, and it's being advocated. You know, killing babies after they're out of the womb, euthanasia, eugenics, the policies, the foreign policy, dissolving our national borders, all these things. These are absolutely destructive and immediate dangers to individual liberty.
Yeah. So I'm trying to get, we got to have, I mean, you were in the FBI. There's got to be some good people in the FBI that know that this is going on, isn't there?
Actually, I would say the number of people that could have a intelligent conversation about this in the FBI is a handful. And nobody in the FBI leadership. And while that may be hard for your audience to believe, let me maybe help folks understand this. I ran the only program that's ever been run inside the U.S. government on these matters, on the Islamic movement, on the Muslim Brotherhood, on their doctrine specifically, and how agents and police officers and intelligence professionals, analysts, how that, when you know that information, how that you can directly impact this, and how it changes when you're interviewing a Sharia-adherent Muslim, or you've arrested somebody, or you're doing a search warrant, things to look for. We're the only ones in the country training police on this, and we obviously are taking a lot of heat for it because we're putting rounds on target, proverbially speaking. We're by name identifying organizations and names of leaders, but we're also doing that for the communist movement as well. So while there may be a handful of people in the government, literally a handful, and I would quote the guy who used to be the director of strategic planning for the National Security Council. He literally said out of the over 300 people on the National Security Council, there might be 8 who could have a reasonable discussion about the things you and I are talking about right now. So we're in a very bad way, and there is because the primary way our enemies are fighting this war is in the information battle space. So it's controlling the narrative, it's propaganda. Look, you got Joe Biden already saying, I won the election, let's move on.
Right.
The media's like, let's move on. And the right answer legally is to say, now, wait a minute, we have significant evidence of massive voting fraud.
Right.
And crimes being committed, both federal crimes and state crimes, involving a presidential election. And we understand who these people are and what they're trying to do. So, no, you're not going to just step into the White House, because there's a chance, and it looks like a good chance, since what is played out is exactly what they said they were going to do. I always believe you should take an enemy at their word when they tell you they're going to do something, like we're going to win at all costs, we're going to kill you, things like that. I think you should take the enemy at their word when they say things like that.
Oh, I agree. So, I have a problem with the media myself, and in fact, that's why I'm doing this radio show. I did op-eds and letters to the editors for 12 or 14 years, probably about 14 years, and then they started, all of a sudden this last year, started censoring me, and when I approached them about it, they said, oh, only the government can censor. And so I told them they weren't going to keep my mouth shut. They weren't going to keep my mouth shut, and I started the show Trigger Warning, where absolutely political correctness is off limits. So you talked about you train police. So if somebody in their county wanted their police trained by you, how would they go about doing that?
Well, just contact us at understandingthethreat.com through the website.
Okay.
And we will immediately follow up. And I can tell you this, for anybody listening who is in law enforcement at any level or knows somebody who's an analyst, a prosecutor, a judge, even a first responder, National Guard, intelligence analyst, whatever, because the 3-day program is for all of those people. But we build it with the focus on local police, because we believe they're the most important, because they're bumping up to the communists and jihadis all the time, and they usually don't know it. Of the thousands of police we've trained, at the end of the training, I always ask 2 questions. How many of you knew this information before you came in here, and do you think this is critical to protecting your community? So far, 100% of the time, the officers have said, we've never heard this information before, and that includes federal agents, including FBI agents who serve on the Joint Terrorism Task Force, and they have all unanimously said, we believe this information is critical to protecting our community.
Yeah, so
So that's the value of it.
Right. So these people are Marxists. They embrace Marxism, right? I mean, they use the Zelensky tactics and everything. That's why everybody's afraid to talk about Muslims. I have no problem with it, but other people do.
Right. Yeah, so Islam's, the Sharia-adherent Muslims, they're the Islamic movement. There's actually a book, The Quranic Concept of War, and but the primary way they're both of these movements, the communists and the Islamic movement, the primary push is in the nonviolent realm.
Yeah.
And as you notice, it's the communist movement in the United States, and to be clear, primarily led by the leadership of the National DNC. So we're very clear. And I don't want to make anybody to get me wrong on this. And if you don't believe that, if you think it's just this is politics, I don't do politics. I do national security.
Right.
And when we can look at, and I know, you're aware of Trevor Loudon. Trevor Loudon published an article. He updated his 2019 report just a couple months ago, that we've got 65 easily identifiable communist/socialist, but Marxists in the U.S. Congress, and all 65 are Democrats. When you look at what the Democrat Party is doing and their actions and their policies, they run directly parallel and identical to the communist movement. When you look at their strategies, as you just mentioned, their actual way that they're operating, yes, Rules for Radicals is the operational plan. That's how they operationalize it. The way they point the finger and say, you're racist, you're a bigot, when they are the party of slavery, the party of the Ku Klux Klan, the party of lynching cards, the party of taking out full-page ads in 1932 for those keeping track, saying that if you want white supremacy, you'll vote straight Democrat ticket, and you'll never see black people in your state legislature. That's the Democrat Party. The same party that in the 1960s opposed civil rights legislation. Right. That's that party. And so when they point the finger and say you're a racist, I just have a hard time even taking that seriously. And I believe if you look at this war, the hammer for the Islamic movement is the communist movement, the communist agitators, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, the Democrats.
Yes, and it is a war, but we're going to have to take a break real quick, and we'll hold on to that thought because I want to talk some more about this when we come back. We'll be right back with John Guandolo of Understanding the Threat.
Hello, all you triglets out there listening to Trigger Warning. This is where we reject political correctness and left-wing insanity, but instead we embrace truth and common sense. You know, there is only one gun group in Oregon that will not compromise on your rights, and that is Oregon Firearms Federation. With all the trickery and evil bills that come from the supermajority in Salem, you need a friend who will keep you informed of these nefarious plans to plunder your rights. If you have not done so, don't delay. Go to OregonFirearms.org and sign up for the free alerts. It will cost you nothing, and you will get the truth on what's going on in Salem. There is absolutely no common sense in giving up your rights, so sign up for our email alerts, and if you want to donate, we won't complain, and it will be put to good use. Oregon Firearms Federation, the only no-compromise gun group in the state of Oregon, at OregonFirearms.org. Sign up today. Northwest Observer, another great news source that tells it like it is. Give it a try. I'm sure you will be impressed. It's time that we have truth in the news. So go to Northwest Observer and give Redoubt News a shot, and you have nothing to lose and only facts to gain. Now, back to Trigger Warning, where we reject political correctness and left-wing nut job policies, and we embrace truth and common sense. With your host, Chris Brumbles.
Welcome back, Columbia County. We're back here with John Guandolo of Understanding the Threat, and we were talking. You mentioned Trevor Loudon before the break, and he will be on here next week because I think it's important to get all this stuff out. So, you said he came up with 65 communists in Congress. Would any of those be well-known people that we know? Is Pelosi part of that?
Yes, she is.
I figured.
And I would encourage people, if you go to trevorloudon.com, you can search that, but it's pretty prominently displayed. Trevor's work is very important in the global communist movement, but specifically, I think his greatest addition to the Allied effort here in the domestic, on the domestic side is knowing key people, key organizations, and being able to talk about how they operate inside the United States and what their roles are. I mean, his work has been invaluable.
Has he done any, well, I probably should ask him, but I'll ask you real quick to see if you know, has he done any investigation about state elected employees being part of the communist movement? Because I'm pretty sure Kate Brown, she's about as far left as Lenin, or a little bit further.
Yes, he knows a lot of state level and even local level folks, not just at the national level. He's very familiar with people. I've asked him, I've called him, and we've had discussions, and when I bring someone up, he's like, yep, I know that person, and if he doesn't, he's like, give me a day and let me do a little digging and see. But yeah, he has a very good beat, especially on the key folks across the country at all levels.
So you think that we could do something about this? They're violating their oath of office big time, and we got to be able to. Anyways, so can you name some of the organizations here that are Wolfson Sheep Clothing that we may or may not know about that are involved in the Muslim Brotherhood?
Absolutely. So let me tee this up. When we left off right before the break, I started to say the communists are the hammer for the Islamic movement. So the violence we're experiencing now is primarily coming from the communists because they are, they're the equivalent, if you will, of Hitler's brown shirts.
Right.
But the black shirts, the varsity team, those are the jihadis. Those are the Muslim Brotherhood Special Section, the Al Qaeda and the ISIS, jihadis. Hezbollah, Hamas, other individuals and groups here inside the United States. So that's kind of gives you a picture. What I want to say, and then I want to answer your question, but I'm going to tee this up for the follow-on question, is the Republican establishment is the linchpin that holds all this together, because without them, the enemy would not be able to do what they're doing. Now, let's talk about the enemy. On the Islamic side, name a prominent Islamic organization, and you're going to find a Muslim Brotherhood group. Well, of course, Council on American Islamic Relations, created 1994 by the U.S. Muslim Brotherhood's Palestine Committee, which is Hamas in the United States. The U.S. Council of Muslim Organizations, which was created in 2014, is the, quote, at that time, the new umbrella organization for dozens of organizations working inside the U.S. Islamic movement, primarily Muslim Brotherhood. The Islamic Society of North America, which has hundreds of subsidiaries around the country, like the Islamic Society of Greater Houston, Islamic Society of Central Virginia, Islamic Society of Arlington, Texas, whatever. Those subsidiaries of ISNA. You've got the Muslim Students Association, which are on every major college and university campus in America, which are nodes for recruitment and dawah for the Muslim Brotherhood to call people to Islam, to recruit them for jihad. Muslim Students Association. You have the Muslim American Society, the Islamic Circle of North America, the Fiqh Council of North America, the International Institute of Islamic Thought, the Muslim Public Affairs Council, the American Muslims for Palestine, which is another Hamas group, MGAGE, E-M-G-A-G-E, which is another front for Hamas in the United States, which openly supported Mr. Biden. Mr. Biden did an online, was the featured speaker at their online conference, where he said in the first 14 seconds of his speech, we need to teach more Islam in our schools, and then he quoted a hadith from the Prophet Muhammad, which calls for waging jihad against the non-Muslim community. So that's how far down we are with that. Now, I want to just, the effect of having these groups doing what they're doing and the influence inside our government is our military crushed the enemy on the battlefield in Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan, yet we lost the wars there because we have no idea of who the enemy is. 100% of the jihadis we face say we're Muslims waging jihad to establish an Islamic state under Sharia. And yet not once since 9/11, yet, as of today, have we identified the enemy,
what
which is a
go
basic
ahead.
requirement to wage a war.
Yes.
You have to identify the enemy. We still haven't done it. That right there should be a huge, flashing, red neon sign that we are getting our butts kicked by the enemy, who is in those liaison roles and in those advisory roles to tell us all about Islam. That's why it's upside down. We're literally having the enemy tell us how to defeat the enemy, and we're wondering why we can't defeat the enemy.
Yeah, but what happened to Islam being a religion of peace?
Well, technically, Islam is a religion of peace because in Islamic law, peace is the situation that exists when the entire world is subordinated to Islamic law. Then you have peace. So technically, it is a religion of peace. Just the peace is defined using a very different definition of peace. Any words that Islamic leaders use when they're talking about anything, you have to filter those English words through the filter of Sharia and what Islam means when they use those words, how Sharia allows divine law defines those words. So terrorism, when a Muslim leader says we abhor terrorism, they mean it, because terrorism is to kill a Muslim without right under Sharia. So a Muslim can be killed for committing adultery, for leaving Islam, for all kinds of things, for blaspheming Islam, for mocking the Prophet. Anybody can be killed for that. But Muslims can be killed for those things. But if you kill a Muslim, like British and American troops on the battlefield, killing Al-Qaeda fighters, that's terrorism.
Oh,
So,
man.
for instance, justice in Islamic law is justice as administered by Islamic law. And for people listening that don't understand how serious this is, the entire Muslim world, all 56 Muslim nations on the planet, are a party to the Organization of Islamic Conference, the OIC, which is the largest voting bloc in the UN, which served a document in 1993 to the United Nations as an official document from the entire head of state of the Muslim world, heads of state and kings of the Muslim world, saying, when we say human rights, we mean Sharia, the Cairo Declaration on Human Rights. The very last article says the only source of reference, and I'm quoting, for any articles in this declaration, which is the Declaration on Human Rights in Islam, is Islamic Sharia, which means it is a human right, from their perspective, to kill someone who leaves Islam. It is a human right that if Islam is in charge and the Islamic State exists where you live, you either convert, you submit to Islamic law and pay the non-Muslim poll tax, or you die. And that's if you're Christian or Jew or Zoroastrian.
Right.
If you're just a pagan, you convert or you're killed. That's basic Islamic law. It's so normative and universally taught that they teach it to 10-year-olds. Where I live in Texas, they teach it where you live. In Islamic schools, they teach it in Arizona in Islamic schools. They teach it in Canada and in Germany and in Jordan and in Egypt and in Morocco, because that's what it is. That's why they teach their children.
So it doesn't even sound like a religion at all. It sounds like, I mean, I knew it was a theocracy, but it's a set of laws, right?
Right.
So
it is. And let me end that thought with this. And I've memorized this quote. The most widely used textbook in U.S. Islamic schools for junior high, for 7th graders, on the very first page, on the second paragraph, it begins with this: Islam is not a religion, however, but a complete way of life. So they teach their 11-year-old children Islam's not a religion, yet Islamic leaders make a stink and complain and say, you must accommodate our religion in your schools and in your office spaces and in your government buildings, even though they're teaching their children Islam's not a religion. It's a complete way of life. What Islam teaches to their children here in the United States and everywhere else is that Islam is a complete way of life. Social, cultural, military, political, and religious, all governed by Allah's divine law, Sharia. The whole purpose of Islam is to wage war against non-Muslims until Sharia is the law of the land. That's it.
Wow.
And if someone says, no, that's not true, that's a radical interpretation, okay, name one book of Islamic law on the planet that teaches the other version. Just one, in any century, in any country. And you'll never find it, because it's a capital crime in Islam for Muslims to teach other Muslims something about Islam that's not true.
Yeah. Well, we're up against the break again, and we will be right back with John Guandolo.
Hello, all you triglets out there listening to Trigger Warning. This is where we reject political correctness and left-wing insanity, but instead, we embrace truth and common sense. You know, there is only one gun group in Oregon that will not compromise on your rights, and that is Oregon Firearms Federation. With all the trickery and evil bills that come from the supermajority in Salem, you need a friend who will keep you informed of these nefarious plans to plunder your rights. If you have not done so, don't delay. Go to OregonFirearms.org and sign up for the free alerts. It will cost you nothing, and you will get the truth on what's going on in Salem. There is absolutely no common sense in giving up your rights, so sign up for our email alerts, and if you want to donate, we won't complain, and it will be put to good use. Oregon Firearms Federation, the only no-compromise gun group in the state of Oregon, at OregonFirearms.org. Sign up today. Northwest Observer, another great news source that tells it like it is. Give it a try. I'm sure you will be impressed. It's time that we have truth in the news. So go to Northwest Observer and give Redoubt News a shot, and you have nothing to lose and only facts to gain. Now, back to Trigger Warning, where we reject political correctness and left-wing nut job policies, and we embrace truth and common sense. With your host, Chris Brumbles.
Welcome back, Columbia County. We are back with John Guandolo of Understanding the Threat, and I recommend that you go to his website and get involved. Maybe I don't know if he has books on there. We'll find out at the end. But so, John, you were talking about. It sounds like the Islam. I mean, I know I already knew that communists were embedded in our university. So Islam is too.
Absolutely.
What about our prisons? I've heard they try to convert people in prisons.
Yes, as a matter of fact, it's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The two certifying authorities for Muslim chaplains, both in the Department of Defense and the Bureau of Prisons, are Muslim Brotherhood organizations, so that ought to give you an idea. As a matter of fact, the guy who created the Muslim chaplain program, Abdurrahman al-Amudi,
mm-hmm.
who, by the way, not only did he create the Muslim chaplain program, he was the advisor, the Islamic advisor to President Clinton and Vice President Gore, was in the White House more than any other Muslim. He also worked with the Department of Education on what went into U.S. public school textbooks about Islam. He was a goodwill ambassador for the State Department and actually participated in the Middle East peace process. And it turns out he was a financier for al-Qaeda, who was originally sentenced to 23 years in federal prison back in 2003.
Uh-huh.
So that's an al-Qaeda guy created the Muslim chaplain program here in the United States. So should be no surprise if an al-Qaeda guy created it and the Muslim Brotherhood certifying what's going on in the military for the chaplain program and the Bureau of Prisons is a train wreck. Should have been shut down 15 years ago, but here we are.
Yeah. So do you believe that these jihadists are working directly with China?
Yes. As a matter of fact, recently, when we look at when Mr. Trump, and I think it was his first year in office,
uh-huh.
When he tried to, when he saw a national security threat from certain countries
uh-huh.
where we couldn't do adequate background checks, and he banned people from entering the United States from these countries, we see communist Chinese organizations in the United States signing letters with leaders of the U.S. Council of Muslim Organization, which include, as I mentioned earlier, dozens of Muslim Brotherhood groups.
Uh-huh.
So you've got them publicly doing things like that, and we have at the local, state, and national level, and even international level, Muslim Brotherhood organizations working with the communist left, Black Lives Matter, Antifa. We've got them working together overseas,
uh-huh.
with ISIS and Al-Qaeda working with Antifa, which is the communist left.
Mm-hmm.
But you're specifically asking about China. So,
yeah.
And then don't forget.
No, go ahead. Tell us about them all. I mean, we need to know where all the threats are coming from.
But in August, this past August, 2 months ago, whatever it was, 3 months ago,
mm-hmm.
China, communist China, and Iran formed a strategic partnership, and they publicized it. So you've got the leading nation state of terrorism. I'm going to use the word terrorism, it's jihad, but in the world, in a strategic partnership with communist China. So at the international level like that, as well as the national level and down to the local level, you've got the communists working directly with the Islamic movement.
Wow. And, I mean, we got it coming from every which way, but, the UN is represented by all 57 states of Islam, right?
Right. So the largest voting bloc,
right,
in the UN is the OIC, which is it has 57 member states, where that includes the 56 Muslim nations plus what they call the Palestinian territories, and those are the 57 member states of the OIC. And yes, the OIC at the international level is the driving force behind the whole Islamic movement.
So I don't understand why. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to get out of the UN, but that's just another reason. It's crazy. So is there a book out there you'd recommend? If some people were going to read one book, is there any that you would recommend to learn more about this stuff?
Well, I would certainly recommend my books, and I'm not only because I wrote them, just because, back when I got recruited in the end of 2008 by the Department of Defense to do strategic analysis and operations on these threats, we went around, myself and one colleague, and we briefed numerous leaders. We briefed former CIA, FBI, DIA directors, national security advisors, attorney generals, former attorney generals, chairman, current chairman at the time of Homeland Security Committee, Judiciary Committee, Intelligence Committee, 3- and 4-star generals and admirals, numerous members of Congress, governors. And I never briefed anyone that had any understanding about what you and I are talking about right now. None.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, a number of them would make comments like, how in the hell do I not know this? I'm getting top secret, classified secret briefings all the time. Why don't I know this? And I said, yeah, that's the question you should be asking, sir, or ma'am. Why don't you know this? And that's where we are. But that goes to what I said earlier about the information warfare. That's the level of control that our adversaries have over these narratives, because they know that propaganda works, information operations work.
Yeah.
That's why they use them.
So I'm sure you've paid attention to Portland and Oregon, and we got about 3 minutes before you get to tell all your websites and stuff. But what do you see going on in Portland? Do you see any of this stuff going on in Portland?
Yeah, it's evident what's going on there. You've got significant jihadi activity.
Yeah.
You've got significant communist activity. And again, it's not just Black Lives Matter and Antifa. You've got people that jump in there just because they love getting in a brawl. People that just want to, be a part of something that they think is whatever. But like I share, if you pick any major riot that's going on in Portland, let's say there are 1,000 people in the street. Out of those 1,000, there might only be 60 or 70 that are actually communists. Real communists. But the useful idiots are no less dangerous because they're also shooting people and burning things down, and they are the arm of that movement. That's how it works. Yeah. That's how it's designed to work. So it doesn't matter. You say, oh, you're saying all these people are communists? No, but the question means you don't understand. Obviously, I'm not talking about you.
Right.
It's about how the movement works. What I'm saying is you have to understand, people have to understand, these movements are massive. Each, the Islamic movement, the communist movement, have thousands of front groups in the United States, and they have penetrated every level of government. The fact that our former FBI director, James Comey, was a communist, John Brennan admitted he voted for the Communist Party presidential candidate back in the early 80s.
Well, he swore in as a Muslim, didn't he?
Yeah, and he also took the Shahada while he was the station chief for the CIA in Saudi Arabia. James Comey admitted in 2003, he said in a New York Magazine article, I was a communist, now I'm trying to find my way. And the system thought that guy was okay to make the director of the FBI. That shows you that the system itself is polluted, and when you can get people at that senior level, which we've had in other areas of the government, but that's pretty amazing that at the same time a CIA and FBI director, those are the kind of people. That's how bad it is. And what we're seeing in Portland, which arguably is one of the worst parts of the country, demonstrates how insidious these movements have been in the downtown Portland area, and really just one or two counties around that, because the most of Oregon is filled with patriots, but not in the city.
Wow. Yeah, Oregon has about 36 counties, and at least 30 vote red every single time, and just full of patriots, and it just makes us sick to see all this stuff going on in our state and our country. But what can the average person do, if anything, to help save this country?
Well, what you can do is you can get involved in the war effort.
Right.
And what I say is, understandingthethreat.com is a great resource, but we aren't parochial. I work with a handful of allies, and the operations that we do around the country, we work closely with a number of allies, obviously including Trevor Loudon and others. And I tell people, please engage in this.
Yes.
Get trained. We have numerous training programs, specifically the Into Action training program, which right now we're running online. The first Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of December is the next program. That is the entry level to give you a baseline, and then get trained. We will bring our team to your town, and we will show you how to build a team, which is part of the Into Action program, how to research these networks, and how to build missions to actually identify leaders and radiate them very aggressively but lawfully to render them incapable of continuing to operate against our republic.
Yes.
And that's where we are. We have got to do this all lawfully but very aggressively. And if you feel like that's too much, you don't want to do that, please fund the war effort. Go to our website. We have a partner organization, Americans for America, which is a nonprofit. Donate to them, become a part of our Freedom 25, become a Minuteman, and join this fight. But the time is now. We are out of time to wring our hands. It is time to join this fight, defend the Republic. We believe this war will be won or lost at the local level, town by town, county by county. That's how we're doing it, and we are finding great success at the ground level.
So we're up against the clock now, so if you could just go ahead and I thank you very much for being on here today, John. I hope you opened some people's eyes. You gave pretty much a lot of your stuff, but is there any more websites or anything you want to give out?
I would just encourage people, go to the website, go to the training page, and look down there. The Train the Trainer, which teaches you how to teach what I'm talking about, is critical. And go to the store. We have DVDs, we have books, we have downloadable streaming video, we have all kinds of stuff at the store. We're doing what nobody else is doing, and we have a long list of successes around the country in the last 8 or 9 years. So I encourage you, go to Understand the Threat, sign up for the newsletter, which will plug you in. And thanks, Chris, for letting me share that with everybody.
Everybody, thank you for being on here again, John, and I'm deeply honored and impressed by your resume. So everybody, that was John Guandolo, Understanding the Threat. Go to his website and check it out, and maybe order some DVDs or books. So I want to thank you all for listening. I truly hope you all learned something and pass the information on to your friends and family. Not only are we going through a tremendous constitutional crisis in this country, but we have had war declared on us by communists and Marxist infiltrators, including some of these Islamic groups. They're being helped by traitors in our own government. This country has never faced this big of a threat, ever. Please join me next week when I will be joined here by Trevor Loudon, who will continue your education on the Marxist threat. Thank you all for your support. Let's continue keeping Columbia County normal and sane. See you next week on Trigger Warning. God bless.
You've been listening to Trigger Warning with Chris Brumbles. You can email your comments to kohi.radio@gmail.com. And listen again next time for Trigger Warning with Chris Brumbles.